Welcome to Season 3 of the Dance Reel podcast. I'm Kate Histon. This episode was sponsored by Master Dancer Mindset. Know yourself, be yourself, and express yourself on and off the stage. Today on the Dance Reel podcast, I'm speaking with Melanie Gard, spokesperson and founder of Dance Arts Alliance in Australia, and also director of Peninsula School of Dance. Today we'll be speaking about child safety and all things dance safe for our dance industry. Dance Alliance is a non-for-profit organisation led by dance industry experts, dedicated to supporting dance studio owners, teachers and businesses across Australia. Through advocacy, accreditation and best practices, Dance Arts Alliance represent dance industry at all levels of government to ensure continued growth and stability. Welcome, Melanie, to my podcast. I'm very honoured that you took me up on the invitation.
Thank you for having me, Kate. I'm really excited to have this conversation with you, and I'm loving listening to your podcast and all of the great conversations you're having. So hopefully I can contribute to that as well.
Thank you, firstly. Thank you. That's very kind of you. And I know as a dance studio owner and as a mother and as an advocate for child safety, you and your team are doing some wonderful things in Australia that really just need to happen. And so to give the audience an insight into what Dance Alliance is, how it started, I would love you to just tell us a little bit about yourself and we'll go from there.
Well, I started dancing when I was a little girl. Usual story with most people, loved to dance. My parents founded just a local dance school in a suburb called Ivanhoe in Melbourne, and was really lucky to land in a place that was incredibly nurturing. My darling dance teacher, who's no longer on this earth, was, I think, really ahead of her time, and her school was very inclusive. She really nurtured that sense of community and camaraderie in the school. So I feel really lucky that I grew up in that kind of environment. And I guess I didn't know anything different, because when you sort of land in a place, it's like, oh, this is what dance is. And then I guess as I got older and connected with more people in the industry, I started to understand that the industry is large and big and there's lots of different parts to it. There were some students that I danced with that went on to dance in the Australian Ballet. And so I was privy to seeing that experience for them going to the Australian Ballet School and into the company. So I guess as my eyes opened, I realised that, not everybody's experience of dance is like this. I then was fortunate enough to, once I'd gone to university, I'd done some work in disability and community development for a long time, but always continued to do my own classes and teach on the weekends. It was just always such an area of passion for me. I was able to purchase a school back in 2006. I guess that period of time I was having young children and just immersed myself in building the dance school from a small little ballet school that had been here on the Mornington Peninsula for many years. I really sank my teeth into growing the school and was really excited to be running a business, and I guess excited to take all of the learnings that I'd had from my teacher and see if I could really develop that further, and that sense of a community and having that sort of community development background. I was able to kind of bring that all in and really shape a school that I wanted my children to be at. I got one dancer out of 3, so the other 2 were much more into football, but that's okay. I love footy as well. And then over time, I could see that there was a real need for studio owners to come together and collaborate. I know that the industry can be really competitive, but I guess I always saw that there was so much benefit from working together and helping each other out. And where I am location-wise, we all know each other locally, and I've just always been really lucky to have this great surrounding of dance teachers that all help each other out. We help each other out with costumes and all those sorts of things. So I guess I saw that as a huge gap in the industry more broadly, that I felt like it was a real shame that we weren't working together on some of the bigger picture issues. And then during COVID, when that all hit, and obviously I never like to really bring up the trauma of COVID because we're still recovering, aren't we? Yeah, it was full on. It was, a deeply traumatic time for many people for many different reasons. But I guess what came out of that was that we realised as an industry that there was really no one advocating for our industry. And if we all remember those roadmaps to reopening and what is that going to look like and how do we run these studios with these kinds of restrictions in place. And the roadmaps didn't include any mention of dance. You know, it was like, well, do we fit into sport? Are we in creative industries? And no one from government could give us any answers. And everyone was really confused by dance for some reason. So there was a few within our local area. We banded together and started making some noise. We just wanted to make sure that we were represented. And as that momentum built and we came together and the conversations kept then coming about beyond COVID, we really need something as an industry. We need a voice to government. We need to be advocating for the importance of our industry. In Australia, we revere and value sport and uphold those things as incredibly important. But for some reason, even though we produce some of the best dancers in the world, we just don't seem to really nurture it as an industry and have that focus. So I guess that was what we wanted, and we came together as a collective. We formulated an organisation called Dance Arts Alliance with the view to creating an advocacy body that could really advocate and unite and bring together the dance and performing arts industry in terms of the education piece. We know that there's other bodies that really focus on the dance and the dancers, but we know that our job in studios is really diverse, and the most important things that we can do is treat children well, teach them safely so that they leave dance with a really good experience. So we really wanted to create an organisation that supported studios to do that and gave them the resources, training, support, making sure that they were following all of the child safety guidelines. In Victoria, the child safety standards were the first ones to be mandated as in terms of legislation. So we really use that as a benchmark for nationally. And a range of other states have come on board with that now, which is fantastic. And there's lots of work happening. So for us, it was really important that the members all were abiding by those safety standards and we were giving them the tools to do that. Because I guess really our industry is unfortunately in an unregulated space. And I mean, I don't need to say, but unfortunately there are so many stories and terrible cases of sexual abuse and grooming and assault, coercion, things that I feel really blessed that I personally haven't experienced, but the stories that I've heard and that have been shared with me have been quite distressing. So,
it's sad.
For me, it's about making sure that we uplift, because we know there's so many great teachers and wonderful parts of our industry, and we don't want to let the bad bits overshadow that. I guess it's really about trying to highlight that.
It's tricky, isn't it? I had a similar thing with this podcast, wanting to shed light on the yucky things, but then also not to be so heavy and drenched in it and speak about what's working. Having people like you on to help us all pave a way of how we can come together. And I have noticed that you've gotten some really great speakers and programs that you're running online. But firstly, I wanted to ask, what are the most common risks of safety gaps that you see in dance schools today?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things that concerns me is people getting in teachers last minute. Every time I see that go up in all of the teacher Facebook groups, I think, oh gosh, no. I think that is just a recipe for disaster. So the best thing that schools can do is really develop resource, train your own teachers, train your students to become your future teachers, protect your culture within your school, and make sure that everyone that's walking through the door has all of those safety checks, has that training in place. I know for me, I would rather cancel a class and get someone in front of my students that I have never seen teach before. Yeah. And that's a lesson that my teacher, she had a ballet company attached to the school at the time when it was really cool. We were able to see all of these amazing professional dancers. They used to travel throughout regional Victoria and do these amazing performances, but she would never let any of them teach without her in the room.
Oh,
Because she always
wow.
said, I know, and this is like in the 80s, she was like, no, she said, just because they're a good dancer does not make them a good teacher. And I will never let them be with my students unless I'm in the room and obviously over time, if they were good, then she would trust them. But I've always held that in the back of my mind. She said that back then. So,
See, that's so good because we can almost glorify professional dancers. And even when I had my
mm,
school in Byron Bay, I would
yeah,
sometimes get for workshops like guest teachers, full timers that are doing quite well, down for one or two classes. And even then, being really honest, I don't think I was diligent in checking they're working for children.
mm,
I did that for all of my staff. I would actually have to speak to, I had a manager at the time. I'd actually have to speak and go, did we do that? I cannot remember. But I remember
yeah,
being incredibly diligent with all the, staff that were in house. But the guest teachers, I can't say with 100% certainty that I was diligent, but I know
mm,
that I hung around and I didn't just sort of leave the room. And
yeah,
some of them, I realized they don't know how to teach. They're chewing gum, they're late, they're talking to the
mm-hmm,
students like that they're their mates, and in a
yeah,
tone that's, if you've got someone around 20 and they're teaching 15-year-olds, there is a gap in age, and all
mm-hmm,
those little things I noticed, or I can't get these people again. So I didn't, but yeah,
yeah,
that's
yeah.
tricky. It's good you brought that point up.
It is tricky. And I love that you said that you can't say that because I I don't want people to think that I'm perfect either. That, over the years, I've learned all of these things the hard way as well because I've had exactly the same experience as you where people
Yeah.
have come in and you're like watching them going, oh my God, they don't know how to talk to these 8-year-olds in the room. They've got absolutely no idea. Or they come in and outblast this music that's like, get dirty with me. And I'm like,
Yeah. Yeah.
what do I say? How do I do this? And now, wiser, older, I'm a lot more confident with those things. But
Yeah.
I think it's important for people to know that we've all made those mistakes and no one's perfect. And I think that's what the Dance Arts Alliance wants to get across too, is
Yeah.
that like everything is always just about learning and improving and helping each other. It's not about being perfect. And we can all look, I could give you a list of 1,000 mistakes I've made as a studio owner. But I think if you have that culture of reflection and learning and going, okay, well, that didn't work. What can I do next time to make that a better experience? And I think it's really important that we have that focus because
Yeah.
otherwise, I think, some people have said to us about joining Dance Arts Alliance. They're like, oh, I don't want to join until I've got all of these things in place. And we're like, no, that's like, come and join, be part of
Yeah.
this, and we'll help you
Yeah.
do those things.
Yeah.
We don't have to be perfect straight away, and no one's ever perfect anyway. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
From your experience, what's the essential first steps a dance studio owner can take to establish a genuine child safe environment? What does that look
Yeah,
like?
I really like this question. And I like my first answer was, have a child safety plan and tick all the boxes in terms of what do we have to do that looks right. So
Yeah.
for a Dance Arts Alliance, remember we asked them to have a public facing child safety policy that anyone can access. It's freely available. So all of those things are like, yes, you need to do those.
Yeah.
But then I started to think, hang on, a piece of paper, we know that it's just a piece of paper or it's just a statement on the website. And I was thinking about it more deeply in terms of what the culture needs to be within your studio and how you lead that as a studio owner, or even if you're a teacher, you might not be responsible for the whole studio. But what is the culture and the environment that you create in your class and your school? Because no matter how hard we try, there's always a power imbalance. That's just the way it is between adults and children, right? So there's always
Yeah.
going to be that power imbalance. And sometimes I've been shocked when a parent's come and said to me, oh, my daughter wanted to speak to you, but she's too scared to speak to you. And I'm like, what do you mean too scared? I'm so nice. I'm not a yelling teacher. We have fun in
Yeah.
class. I make silly jokes. I
Yeah.
try and be really accessible. But even still, when you are like that, students still really value you as an adult. They want to please you. and they want to do the right thing, and especially dance kind of lends itself to kids that really want to do the right thing, especially ballet. So I think for me, it's about creating lots of different avenues for kids to feel like they can speak to you, that they can be seen, that they can be heard. And I don't mean that in a way that like every class is just a chat fest.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think there's just so many different parts of your studio and points of interaction. So it might be things like where you have extra activities, where you might have a pajama party or a disco, or, just different ways that you can interact with families and students and create that openness, have really clear communication lines through, your newsletters saying, if you've got questions, please come and ask us, please come and speak to us. We have an open door if you've got concerns. So for me, it's a very layered approach, and always being very aware of the power that we do hold. I have to check myself on that regularly. I think as the studio owner, but also with my teachers, making sure that they're checking in on that and making sure that perhaps those quieter kids just might need different ways of doing things, or different, communication strategies and that sort of stuff.
So with regard to child safety, how do you structure or recommend others to structure their school in terms of transparency? And for example, Instagram, are your teachers allowed to be friends with students on Instagram? What's that model like?
We have a flat policy of not being or communicating or being friends over those platforms. But I have to be really transparent on that too, because I've got some younger teachers that are transitioning from being, or are still currently students. So they're students of mine. They're studying for their teachers' certificates, those higher level ballet exams. So they're still very much dancing themselves. They're studying to be teachers, and they teach here. And it does get a little bit mucky, right? Because they are friends. Yeah. So we have lots of conversations about that, and making sure that they're not communicating with anyone in their peer group to do with anything about the school on that front. But some of them are in friendship groups that do transcend those things. So I think it's really important to be open and make sure that everyone's really clear about the boundaries. In terms of staff putting any kind of footage or any kind of, that's just an absolute flat no. Any communication must come through all of our studio. They're welcome to reshare things, from our platforms. That's fine.
I'd never really had any students that transitioned to stay on to become a teacher in Byron Bay. A lot of them wanted to just get out and to travel, to go pick up a dancing career or go to university, and that meant leaving Byron Bay. So I would have loved to have had, a few of them transition into teaching had they have stayed. So I didn't have that problem, but I did once have a problem with a teacher that would have been around the 6 years older than the students want to befriend them. And, in my policy, it was very clear in induction, onboarding. In her head, she just thought I was being an unfair boss that, well, why can't she hang out with them? No. And so...
Yeah, it's so hard, isn't it? And I think the thing is too with dancers is that you do create friendships that transcend most normal friendships. I think like my dance friends, I'm so close with. They're like sisters to me. I don't know if these are the right words, but it is a very, like when you're dancing in class, you're sharing a part of yourself that you don't necessarily share with other people in that way. And so it's a very bonding experience dancing together, isn't it? Like in performing in shows, and there's this kind of camaraderie that it's really hard to explain to people outside of the industry. But that's the bit where the boundaries cross over. And I mean, we saw that recently with a case in Sydney and Brisbane, I think there was a case in the news of teachers sharing drugs with their students and partying with them, and just stuff that fries your brain when you think about it. But it's just all of those boundaries are just like poof, gone.
Yeah.
And we all know how vulnerable we were when we were 15, 16, 17. Because again, we want to impress those people. We want to be part of that cool club, as you were saying. And it can make for a really...
it's a power imbalance ultimately. Do you know what I mean? And even if nothing sinister happened, regardless, it's still a power imbalance. You don't hang out with your school teacher at school. You want to be mentors to young dancers, but not their friends, and drawing that line to be friendly, but not stepping over that line.
Tricky stuff.
Yeah. So on that, how should studio owners approach developing clear and practical child-safe policies in everyday dance settings?
Well, first of all, be a member of Dance Arts Alliance because we'll help you with all of that. But also there are really clear guidelines through your local state government, you know, whether it's the Office for the Guardian, the Commission for Young People, depending on what state you're in. And they provide templates and ways that you can put together all of those policies. I think, though, there's a danger in just copy and pasting those templates. Like a lot of the stuff I see is, and, you know, I will say I've used those templates too. What's really important that within your studio is that you're using those policies and templates to really embed them in your everyday practice. So as an example, we were talking earlier before about getting in guest teachers or cover teachers. Do you have a process for that? So if you do need a cover teacher, have you got a document that they, you know, a Google form, for example, that they can go in and you can get them to sign off that they've read that you're a child safe studio, that they will abide by X, Y, and Z, that you've laid your expectations out, that the music is, there's no swearing or sexual innuendo or whatever it, you know, whatever it is that you is really important in your studio, that you've communicated that and they've signed off on it. Do you have regular staff meetings where you bring your team together and you talk about issues within your school and communication? I had a student message me, what do I do? Okay, well, we need a template here. You go, everybody, cut and paste. This is your response to that student, and you're redirecting it. So you're giving your team strategies to deal with the issues as they come up. You know, how are you working to include neurodiverse students? Can you get in a local occupational therapist that might come and do some professional development? So you're always keeping those policies moving and up to date. And are there new things that we can do rather than just cut, paste, there you go. I think there's a danger of just going, okay, we've ticked that box and then we're not really thinking about it anymore. So, yeah, it's important that it's irregular.
I think that this would also get the school to really reflect on what their culture is. It's not just about, as you said, child safety. It's actually about embodying a culture of safety. And for me, I also, that looks like language, how we approach the way we speak to students, and so much. Is there anything else involved that you would like to talk to on that front?
From my own experience, I've been really lucky to have some amazing mentors in my time as a studio owner, where I've created a set of studio values. So we have 5 studio values, and everything that we do within the studio, we run through those values. If we're doing a new program or we're looking at a new event that we might be doing, we look at those values and say, does this fit? Does this fit with our core values? And if it passes that test, then we might say, yes, let's do this. If it doesn't, basic example would be a competition. So we're a non-competitive studio. And if we were invited to do something like that, we would sort of look at our core values and say, well, actually, that doesn't really fit with what we're doing here. So we're going to say no to that. So I think it's really important as a studio that you spend that time really looking at what is it that you want your students to experience when they walk through your doors. If you are a competitive studio, there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. That's totally fine. Be really clear about what your values are around that and what your expectations are, and be communicating that with your families and have that transparency so that then you're going to attract the right people to your studio as well. I think it's really important for you to understand what you're offering and your own value set, and then help that then can help guide you through all of those child safety elements too.
What about parents watching classes? Do you allow parents to watch classes?
Yes and no is a short answer to that. If anyone wants to go in and watch, they're never told no. We don't have the capacity. Some of our studios are smaller, but what our policy is that when a new student is starting, the parent is absolutely 100% welcome in the room for as long as they need to be. We've found over time that having, especially with the younger kids, because they often come with babies and toddlers and grandma and grandpa and all of the things. We do have toddler classes where the parents stay. That's a given. Once they move into those older classes, they're not in the room, but the doors are open. The parents can go in at any time if they need to. So it's not a closed door policy. Then we have open days and those sorts of things. I do have another studio, and that site does have viewing windows. It's set up like that. So I strongly believe that studios should have an open door policy, that should be a given, that parents should always be able to, if they've got any concerns. And I find generally here, if you let the parents in, let them see how you work, let them engage with the teachers and build that trust, then they're like, she's fine. He's fine.
Yes. Yeah.
So you've got that trust relationship. Got video cameras everywhere too.
Okay, that's good. I struggled with that because, again, little kids, yes, parents come in, watch, and then transitions. We had a transition period because that was the logistical problem. The studio, it just cannot provide space. And then if one parent wants to watch, I've noticed another parent, I'll come in and watch too. And then we had the problem of the kids deferring to the parent, depending on the age, so that they might be in class and they're always looking at their parent. So I had more of a closed door policy because I didn't know how to manage those things. Parents were allowed to come in. It's not like they weren't allowed, but we would mainly teach with the door open, and then the office was there and our manager was there. But it was just like you don't kind of hang around and watch class. But I was thinking, if I still owned the school, I wanted to transition that. And I was thinking, should I put in these windows that are one-way windows? Because I don't want the kids to be distracted. Do I then have a camera and stream it and just people in that class get to watch? And then you're going, but then what if you've got those, my child, and you do I know from my upbringing as a dancer, when the parents were involved, politics began. So that for those studios that might have that also run competitions, that's a very real problem for them as well. And then how to navigate transparency with managing that. I know I wasn't the only school that thought, how do we do this?
I agree. I think it's really, really tricky because you're always going to have those parents that overstep the mark.
Yeah.
We have cameras here, and we used to have a TV in reception that streamed the views from the studios out into reception. And what I found was that then the parents all just started gathering around this tiny little screen, and then they would come up and say, is there a reason why my child's this or that's happening? And it was just like they could see what's happening, but they couldn't hear what was happening. And it was just like, it just actually caused more problems. So I just one day turned it off and didn't turn it back on. But I can turn it on if I want to, if anyone asks. But I think if in that initial stage when they're enrolling, that you are really transparent and supportive early on, I think that's really important. Whereas I did hear from a friend of mine recently that went to enroll her daughter in a dance school in another area, and she was like, oh my God, she goes, first class, trial class, wasn't allowed in, just took my child. And I was like, oh my God, your child's 3. Like, and I didn't really get this until I had children. I was like, there's no way I'd let my 3-year-old just go off with someone like what? Like, they're not big enough to advocate for themselves. And so I think we have to understand that, little children need their parents to make sure that where they are is safe. And I guess that's the other language we say, is that we want you as a parent to feel assured that everything we're doing is safe and that your child is well and happy, and feel assured that if we've got any concerns about your child's participation, that we will come and get you and we will, talk with you about that. So I think if you've got that line of communication, we're not a competitive studio, so I kind of avoid I guess, some of those more tricky circumstances. But I know that can be tough. But again, it comes down to leadership, really. As a studio owner, sometimes you got to put on your big girl or boy pants and deal with it and be firm with people. And again, coming back to those studio values, if people are behaving in a way that's not in line with the studio values, talking to them about that and being upfront about it. I make no qualms now of letting people know that this is the way we do things if you don't like it. Bye-bye.
Yeah, no, yeah, exactly.
Mm,
Starting my school so young, it took me a little while to get to that point. But once I did, it felt it's that thing of having to feel, well, what feels right for me, what feels right for obviously the students, and the teachers. How can I support? You're supporting, like you're holding space for so many people, right? You've got your students, your teachers, and the structure of the school, then your future. We're constantly thinking about what next, where are we growing in
mm.
community. So I take a moment to say, well done, dance studio owners. It's not easy. It's not
It
easy. And
is not easy. Yeah. And I think that's the other thing I'd say to people is that the Dance House Alliance is an opportunity for us to shape what we want regulation to look like rather than it
yeah,
being imposed on us. And it's coming. Government are
yeah.
looking at our industry and going, holy heck, this is the wild, wild west right now.
You were just at Parliament.
Yeah. Yep.
So
So, yeah,
tell us about that.
It's been a wild few weeks, let me tell you.
Yeah.
So that was part of NAPCAN, which is National Association for Prevention of Child Abuse and Neglect. They lead, it was Child Safety Awareness Week a couple of weeks ago, and every year they run a parliamentary group where they have to get sponsored by an MP, and then they invite ministers to come in and hear from local groups or peak bodies about the work that they're doing in the area of child safety. So that was really exciting. We had the opportunity to platform our work and put forward our proposal for a national regulatory body for dance and performing arts.
Wow.
And I guess our position is that we want this to be led by the industry. Government are looking at all of these issues, and we know the horrific stories that have come out from childcare settings, which we would assume are regulated, right? Apparently not so well. And so they're tightening things up in there. But what the team from NAPCAN spoke to us about was that as soon as an area gets tightened up, people that seek out children to groom and abuse will look for those unregulated spaces and look for it where it's easy to take advantage of children. And it leaves our industry just wide open. It's already wide open. The way that the working with children check system works is just an absolute abysmal situation that, people can move between states without too many checks and balances. To get your working with children check revoked, you have to be convicted or under investigation. But we know so many stories of dancers, performers, students that have been groomed, abused, assaulted, coerced, and those teachers are still teaching. And those young people are really upset by that. There was a petition at the start of the year that was formulated by a couple of young dancers, and it had 20,000 signatures. Yeah. And what they were calling for was more regulation for tighter controls so that these people that, if they're under investigation, then they should not be able to teach. They should not have access to children. There's a local school not too far from me where the teacher has actually been charged with an assault against a 16-year-old, and that school is still operating because now they only teach adults. But that person is still able to teach. And
that actual person's still able to teach.
Yep. So it just...
But they're predatory. Like, it's predatory behaviour, ultimately.
Yeah. So if we don't ask for these things, if we don't advocate for tighter controls, for ways that we can, if someone does something poorly, there's nowhere to report it. You can report it. You call the police. The police are going to go,
yeah,
okay, unless it's like significantly serious.
Yeah.
Time and time again, people have been told, we can't deal with that. There's nowhere to go.
Yeah.
There's nowhere to speak to these things. And we strongly believe we need a body where every teacher can be registered to that body. And if there's concerns, that they can be flagged. And, there's some checks and balances for our industry. But at the moment, there's nothing. Absolutely nothing.
It's sad. And, even just on a systemic issue, I look at my background, and I've publicly spoken about the school I trained at. where for 10 years where the teacher was revered, and she's passed on now and is still revered by
Yeah.
institutions. And you think, well, hang on, what message are we actually also giving? Not that I want to defame anyone, but let's actually speak the truth of what really happened in that environment. You know, I just get curious as to why people, also parents, if their kids are doing well and sending their kids to very competitive schools, what they will put up with at the cost of their child having a career. And I've seen that online and, you know, certain schools and
Yeah.
languages. And I think, well, where is also the responsibility with parents where they are going to send their kids to school, where they're going to research it? Because at what point is this really about the safety of your child, or is this about this, I don't know, career, or this, is that really about the parent? Well, I always think that about that compromise, because I know for me, I lived that as a child from home and from the dance school, and the pain of that was huge. And the therapy, years. So I kind of am like, come on, people, let's wake up.
Let's fix this. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, I think your point about the parents is really important, and that, I mean, that's one of the things that we, with the Dance Arts Alliance website, parents can go on and search for a school that's registered with the Dance Arts Alliance. So it's not perfect, but it's a way of a parent going, okay, I know that this dance studio is really invested in child safety, and that's really important to the studio owner and the teachers there. And so I think you're right. I think we need to educate parents. The main thing is that we're creating not just dancers, but great young people that can go on and have successful careers in whatever they choose to do. We know that dance sets kids up so well with so many skills, and so many skills that really now in this world, they're going to need these soft skills that we're creating through dance, this creativity, this ability to collaborate and work with others and be connected. It's so important. So I think, educating the parents about that. So I met earlier today with the National Office for Child Safety, where the Dance Arts Alliance are doing a presentation for them later this week. And the staff member that I've been liaising with there, she said, I just wanted to let you know, she said, my 3-year-old loves to dance, and she said, I want to enroll her in dance because, you know, she twirls and swirls everywhere, and I want to support that. And so she said, I went on the website and I rang the local studio that was registered with Dance Arts Alliance, and she said, I just rang as a parent, not as someone from the Office of the Child Safety. And she said, it was so great. She said, I asked a few questions, and this person said, it's really important that, you know, we take child safety really seriously. You can see all of our policies here. And she said, she talked me through, she said, completely unprompted. And I was just like, yes, that's exactly what we want. We want to educate the parents through that process as well, so that they know what is expected. And it's not about how well you can point your toes and how high you can kick your leg and all those things. So yes, that's important, but it's kind of secondary to your child coming out the other end of it with a well-rounded, positive experience. Because how many are going to be dancers?
Exactly.
Not many.
Exactly.
Really.
No.
Yeah. There's some really great research. Actually, I've got a friend who she's just about to finish up her PhD in Queensland, and it's on the early specialisation in young dancers. So looking at, does specialising in, she looks specifically at classical ballet, have any bearing on whether or not that child will become a professional dancer? And her research shows that no, it doesn't. And then recently the Royal Ballet announced that they're not taking kids under 15, I think, the Royal Ballet
how
School.
good's that?
Did you see that?
Yeah, I did. That made me so happy. Yeah.
I feel like the tide's changing a little bit on that front.
Yeah. And funnily enough, you say that, because I have a family member who said that she's put her daughter into classes and she said, you know, but they were just spinning and, you know, it wasn't really like ballet. And I said, no, that's good. That's good. She's only 3, you know. But at this age, we just want her to develop a connection and a love of music and let her body do what comes naturally with facilitation from the teacher. But no, that's great. That's a good teacher. She's like, I thought that they needed to learn to point their feet. And so she didn't see value in the class because there wasn't what she thought would be enough structure or learning steps. And I went, no, that's a really good class.
Yeah,
for this
absolutely.
age group. Mm.
You know what? I've had people over the years leave my school because my preschool program is really successful. I don't use a
Yeah.
external program. I've developed it myself, and it's all based in the fact that children learn best through play. So it's very
Yeah.
play-based driven, following the children, all with the themes and la la la. And a couple of times I've had people leave because they're like, they just didn't. And I'm like, well, if you want to come and see my senior dancers and see how that
Yes.
turns out, because that's how they started and they're
Yeah.
pretty good dancers now. And then I've had people that have left and then come back because they've realised. But yeah, it's hard to stick to your guns sometimes around that stuff because you do feel a bit like, there's a school down the road that are teaching the kids to turn their legs out this way and do all these things. I'm like you, I don't believe that has any bearing on the future of their dance technique at all.
No.
And the dance science shows that.
Yeah. And as a teacher, I think I got my RAD final qualifications in 2003. The stamp of approval came. And I remember they changed the syllabus. I think maybe it was about 2010 to 12, or maybe earlier. I can't remember. But everything just got revamped. And I remember seeing the new primary syllabus. And I thought, as a teacher, I was like, where's the first position? And but they had to re-educate me. This is actually the best way children can learn, play-based learning. And so as a teacher, I went through that transition as an RAD teacher, and I found it at first obviously frustrating having to relearn the whole syllabus after you feel like you've only just learnt it all. But the children loved it so much more.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, back in the day, I remember my ballet teacher saying they weren't allowed to do ballet till they were 8. She was a dancer in the 30s and 40s.
Yeah.
And you didn't start ballet until you were, they did weird things like toe tap dancing and
Yeah, wow.
things that we don't do now. But I always remember that the Cicchetti syllabus started when you were 8.
Yes.
And there weren't any of those pre-levels, and they've come in over time. But yeah, the same, moving away from forcing turnout and working in parallel and using games and play and meeting kids where they're at, I think is just so important. And that is child safe too. You're respecting, they're not mini adults.
No.
They're little growing humans that are developing their brains and all those neural pathways, and we have to respect where they're at and meet them where they're at and look after their bodies.
Yeah. And how could a parent tell if a teacher is a safe teacher? I think of this tender age of actually where they're preteens and they get this fascination with their teacher and this I saw it through my school. They all of a sudden, I want to be a dancer, and it seems to be this common thread around 10 it starts. And so they'll work really hard. They'll do as many classes as they can. And I've been reading up a lot about fawning and about what looks like attachment to a teacher as opposed to wanting their approval. So it's quite nuanced, right? And I get fascinated by this. So, I think if I had, my daughter came to my school. So if I was a parent and a child came home and they're talking a lot about their teacher and a lot about their teacher, and immediately as a parent, we might think, oh, that's great. That's great. But sometimes I also think, and I don't want to put fear into anyone, but what is too much? If it's too much revering of the teacher, for me, I kind of also go, that's a little bit of a red flag. Is the culture of the school too competitive? Is my child trying to get the approval of the teacher too much, and why? Parents think that's amazing. This teacher's a wonderful mentor and they're so enthusiastic. But I think as a parent, it's probably a good idea to be a little bit curious around that and not just assuming it's healthy. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? I don't want to.
I just think you've asked me. Yeah, I think about this a lot.
Yeah.
A lot. And I'd sort of referenced it earlier about that power imbalance stuff. And I've felt it where I felt my students like,
okay,
you know what I mean? Like they want to be you.
Yeah.
Not so much now that I'm older. And what I see with my younger teachers who are, my daughter is one of them. My daughter is a professional dancer and she's in that space where she's still teaching for me, auditioning, doing professional work, all that kind of stuff. And she is young, beautiful, an amazing dancer. And the students here adore her. I also have many other teachers that are also of that ilk. I think what's really important, because I've seen it over the years where if a teacher leaves and the kids are like beyond devastated, and it's like, it's great that they feel, and and I've had parents say to me, "Oh, what are you going to do?" Like, just keep doing what I'm doing, because I think as studio owners, we have to have diversity within our teaching staff, which is hard if you're a very small school. But I think what I observe is that where schools have one or two teachers that are everything to that school and the students hang off everything those teachers say, that's when what you're saying, I think, can be really dangerous, because all of that power imbalance and students getting over obsessed with particular teachers can be really not healthy, I don't think.
And if they're the wrong teacher, that's where it's really dangerous.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And where that's important, going back to what we were saying before about, for me as a director, part of every staff meeting, we are talking about child safety. We are talking about power imbalance. We are talking about all of these things so that those younger teachers coming through are aware of it, that they're educated. So if they do start to see those things happening, they can come and talk to me, come and talk to other, more mature teachers within the team. So I think that is really, really tricky. And I think constant reflection and constant conversation is critical to making sure that you're always being reflective and not getting into that space, because it feels good, right? So as a teacher, it feels like, I'm looking above here. I've got little cards from students. Miss Mel, you're the best teacher in the world. Geez, that feels good as a, for my own ego. If I'm having a bad day and I can look up and see the little sparkly card drawn by little Blossom that's come in and told me that I'm her favourite teacher ever, gee, that feels good. So I think it's really important that we don't, as teachers, rely on all of that to make us feel good, because I think that's when you can fall into that sort of cycle and trap of that with your students. So, I think it's awareness. So it's kind of, they don't aspire to be a 50-year-old mum with 3 kids. Do you know what I mean? Like,
it's good. I mean, it's good for their confidence. And I suppose I'm more speaking to, my son was at preschool. The teacher was a bit harsh, like an incident happened and a few parents complained and there was a meeting and they're all speaking German and I don't really understand what they're saying. But being a teacher in my background, I just piped up and vocalized the problems that I'm seeing with their structure and about having support. And, it was an unfortunate situation. Anyway, but I won't go into that, but I will go into the committee then said, but we've spent the week monitoring this teacher and monitoring the behaviours of the children around this teacher, because the teacher, her approach was in question. She's a well-educated teacher, but has probably a little bit old school approach. And I'm thinking, but do you actually know children are running up to her and being, oh, miss. That's also from fear. That's not just because they're revering a teacher. It's because they fear their teacher and they're wanting to fit in. So I lived that and I know what that feels like as a student. But if students are in a school system, especially ones that do run competitions, because kids want to be in the front line, and then if they've got this cool teacher, then it can be this pattern of, oh, I want the teacher to like me. And it's not necessarily because they are looking up to them so much. It's from that fear of wanting to fit in and hold their own in that school. So I also, just that nuance difference for teachers and for dance studio owners, especially when they've got a competitive stream, because it's more privy to that behaviour. Especially if there's pressure, especially if this teacher really wants their routine to win, that can breed that other, fear. That's all.
Yeah. Oh, I hear you. If I can use this term, the biggest ick that I have in our industry is the flip of that, is where teachers revere particular students and own that student's success. And it's not to say that I would, and I am proud of my students that have gone on to have careers in dance and love to celebrate that. But I will never and I always check myself on this because I've seen it and it gives me so much ick, where the teacher owns that success. And I always think we should never own anyone else's success. We can celebrate and be excited to be part of their journey, but that individual's success is because of their own drive, their own talent, their own willingness to do the work. And you can be proud of that, but it really grates on me when I hear that from teachers. I just think, wow, you know, again, it's that ego piece, right? So being sort of driven by the success of those few students, because honestly, how many students are going to be professional dancers? Not many, a handful. And if that's our only definer of how successful we are as a teacher, well, I think that's really sad. Like for me, the success is seeing all of those young people go out and be successful humans and get good jobs and be driven and go and do all sorts of things. Yeah. So I hear you.
And maybe it is just about opening our eyes and looking at some nuance, and it's not a black or white, but definitely worth having the conversation over.
If we can get past that, so get past teachers owning their students' success, that actually deals with part of that idea of then students having to fawn for that approval, and it goes both ways, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really does.
But there's so many good people in our industry as well. I always want to say that because, as I said to you, I know sometimes the criticism that's been levelled at the Alliance has been you're trying to tear the industry down. And
really?
Yeah, just a little, just from here and there. I think for us, it's really like we want to platform and uplift and put a spotlight on all of the really good things that come out of our industry. And
you know, you can't just grow flowers without pulling the weeds sometimes, you know, and by pulling the weeds, I mean having these conversations. And so it's a two-way thing. It's about systemic change and education. It's working both ways. And so I think what you're doing is really great. And I know there are so many people in the industry that it's like, yes, thank you, Alliance, we need you. And if their integrity is to do right by students and by themselves, then they'll be on board, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes, though, I find it's also looking at our own shame of teaching in terms of, I know for me, when I was a younger teacher, after the 2012, 13, that big thing that happened in our industry, that person, and then child safety came in and I jumped on it, but I had this like, am I doing a bad job? Am I a good teacher? And I was a lot younger and definitely insecure for sure. And my friend Tina Moore, she owns TMP in Newcastle. She's great. And we worked together she's like, right, let's implement these. She'd send me stuff on child safety. And it just was like, I don't know, just me having a look at.
Well, it's also like looking in your own backyard, isn't it? It's like, oh, hang on. Like there's so many things. I'm constantly like going, oh, crap, we haven't got that policy in place or, you know, like, and I think it's just as long as you're willing to try and keep learning. And
I think it took me 8 years to get contracts with teachers when I first started my school. Mind you, I was 19 and I remember when I didn't have one and someone was like, do you have one? I'm like, no. And I quickly got one, but it was like this, little like, So I don't know. Anyway, if anyone feels that way, just, we're all in this together.
There. We're all absolutely, no one's perfect. And I'm all up for being transparent and and I've got so many stories of things that I've done wrong in my early years as a studio owner. So, you know, it's all learning.
Yeah, for sure. It absolutely is. So looking to the future, what changes do you hope to see in the dance industry's approach to safeguarding, and how can schools and organisations work together to achieve it?
That's a really good question, and there's so many parts to it. But number one is having a national regulatory framework that we can all work to and that we can come together around. So making sure that we're all on the same page. We all want the same thing for our students, for them to come outside of their training with a happy, healthy, positive experience. And I think we can really drive that change together. It's important that it's industry-led and that we are, as educators, as studio owners, as business owners, driving that change. We don't want it to be plonked on us by the government. We want to work with the government to get that framework in place. And I also think it's really important that we find ways of platforming victims and survivor experiences and their voices, because I think that's an area that we're really not doing very well with as an industry. I know the conversations we'd had around the petition that was put out earlier this year, those victims didn't want to put their names to anything for fear of losing work in the industry, for being blacklisted and not getting jobs. And I think that's really sad that they don't feel that they can have that voice. I would hope that in the future that those victims and survivors actually feel like they can come forward and share their stories if they want to, and not feel that fear. So, I hope that that's something that the Dance Arts Alliance can support, and that our industry, it's a wonderful place, and it's a wonderful place for kids to learn. And I'd love to see Australia better supporting the arts, because we know that not every kid wants to play sport, and that our studios are wonderful places for neurodiverse kids, for kids from the LGBTQ community. So I think our studios do a magnificent job of including everyone in their community. So I really want that to be, for a light to be shone on that as well, and that to be supported. And for governments to give us all the money.
Yes.
I don't mean personally. I just mean things like, give us some tax breaks, guys. Like, come on, give us some subsidies. We're running these big, enormous spaces in the communities, and, look at all those sporting grounds, and the millions gets poured into all of those. And our studios that we resource and support on our own, I think government need to give us more.
Yeah. Oh, well, thank you so much, Melanie. I'm for one, I'm very grateful and really impressed with who you are and what you're doing leading this in Australia. So thank you so much. On behalf of many studio owners out there, I can say that they would all be very grateful too.
Oh, thank you, Kate. And I would just want to say too, it's not just me. There's an amazing team behind the Alliance. There's, 10 board members that all work. Everyone volunteers their time. There's lots of great members. So please reach out to the Alliance. We're here to support people, and your voice is important. So please reach out if you want to. And thanks, Kate. Thanks for, it's amazing what you're doing with this podcast. Really great conversations, and your blog as well. It's really important work. So keep going from Germany.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. To help us bring some wonderful guests to our show and grow, please subscribe or follow this channel, like, comment, and share with a friend. That would be a great help. Thank you so much.